a chat function for Q&A. We will stop a couple of times and answer questions to the best of our ability. And I just wanted to let you know, at the top of your screen, there is a view option, and you can kind of play around with it just in case you see more of the chat box or the screen is taking up too much room on your, the PowerPoint is taking up too much room on your screen. You can make some adjustments. And that's just on the top there. If you hover up front and hit view options. I am thrilled to introduce Ed Potosnak. And none of you have heard him speak before, it's a real thrill. He's fantastic. He's the Executive Director for New Jersey League of Conservation Voters. And NJLCV is such a fantastic partner with ANJEC with plastics and so many other important issues. And if any of you folks had a chance to read the summer ANJEC report article, Ed authored a fantastic article for us on coronavirus in New Jersey. Don't be frightened into using single-use plastic bags. So I am thrilled to have Ed on. And if you just give me a second, let's get our presentation going.
Perfect. Well, it's great to be here. Thank you for having this. I want to thank folks for joining as well. You know, I guess today is Thursday. It's sort of still hard to keep track of the days, particularly in the summer. It's really nice to be with the folks that care about the environment at the local level and looking for ways and actions that they can take to really make a difference. They say all the time, or we like to say, all politics is local. And you know, with a lack of leadership at the federal level and sometimes at the state level on environmental issues, the localities and municipalities have an increasingly important role to shape the habits and usage, and also clear environmental decisions that affect all of us throughout our state and the country. So I will say that municipalities are on the leading edge of environmental protection, and typically the state and the federal government soon thereafter, or maybe never, follows. It's certainly more efficient at the federal level to have everything done there, but it is the most difficult as well. So this is a really great opportunity to talk about an issue, single-use plastics, and particularly in the COVID-19 pandemic, why it's important to continue to see action and ability for us to take action to reduce plastic. So my name is Ed Potosnak. I'm Executive Director of New Jersey League of Conservation Voters. I want to thank N.Dini. I'm excited to be here today and thank ANJEC for having us and all of you. ANJEC is a fantastic partner. We work with a lot of folks across the state, but the work they do with the local communities just cannot be overstated its importance. And the work that a lot of the members and commissioners that are here today do is just so critical. At New Jersey LCV, we represent Democrats, Republicans, and independent voters who care deeply about the environment and want their elected officials to care deeply about the environment as well. We advocate for strong policies that protect our environment, and we also hold elected officials accountable at all levels of government to safeguard our health and our communities, to protect the beauty of our state, and inextricably linked to good environmental protections is also a strong economy. They're not separate, they're actually together. And particularly around water, we see that, and the plastic pollution is something that really is pervasive in our water supply and into the web of life, and the food we eat is we're finding plastics in it. So really pleased again to be here. So clearly the last few months have been difficult ones for New Jersey residents. COVID-19 has caused all kinds of impacts, and it's affecting everything from the way we work and the way we go to school to the way we socialize. And what we're here to talk about today is the plastic waste that we're producing. And the problem with plastic waste isn't a new one. We know about the impacts of plastic pollution. I mentioned in our aquatic species. We've seen the pictures of turtles with straws coming out of their nose. We've heard the stories of whales washing up on shore with nearly hundreds of plastic bags in their stomachs. And plastic pollution is getting progressively worse. Half of the plastic ever made and that has been produced has been in the last 15 years. And we're out on pace, rather, to quadruple our plastic production by 2050. And if you take a look at these statistics, we're using more and more plastic. You can see why it's crucial to continue the fight to get rid of unnecessary plastics. The bad news is we can't recycle our way out of this problem. It's not a recycling problem. It's an engineering problem. Most of the single-use plastics can't be recycled. But the good news is that this problem is solvable. And I like to say that, humans do cause problems. But the nice thing is we have brains. And we can solve the problems we cause, particularly when we realize the magnitude of the problem. And these solutions already exist if we're willing to take the initiative and explore them. And New Jerseyans, I think, are ready to be part of that solution, and particularly with plastics. And I'll cut to the chase here. The solution to our plastic problem, and much of it, already lies in our houses. It's in our closets. It's in our cars as reusable bags, if we remember to bring them to the store. It's in our cabinets as reusable water bottles. I mean, these are things we have. We just need to prioritize using them and get rid of these single-use, really hazardous and toxic and persistent single-use plastics. So next slide. The single-use plastic ban. So for those of you who have been following the plastics fight here in New Jersey, you're probably aware of a bill that would ban plastic bags, polystyrene foam, and food service products, and would also make straws only available on request. This bill was a first step in our state to take on and make a dent in our plastic pollution problem. The bill number is on, I think it's on the screen now, but if not, we'll make sure you have it. It's S864 and Assembly Bill A1978. It's a bill that many of our organizations have been pushing for many years and is a core component of New Jersey LCV's common agenda for 2021 for the environment. And we're proud to work with ANJEC on a partner who's been a tireless leader in this fight. And we came really close last December in getting the bill passed. And I think a lot of the environmental commissions were waiting to see what was going to happen at the state level if they needed to take local action. So it didn't make it. And a lot of local municipalities move forward with their local ordinances, which is a great idea. We just can't wait for inaction in the legislature. But I will say there is some good news. S864 has passed once again out of the Senate, and now it's up to the Assembly to carry that torch. And it's been just sitting and lingering there. So one thing you can do is call your assembly member and tell them how important this bill is in the fight to keep our community free from plastic pollution. If you go to the next slide. There are other state and federal actions that we can have as well. So now some folks know, they've been following the news, China has stopped taking our waste, and there's a strong public demand for recycled content and reusables. So a first step forward in the solution could possibly be another bill, which is S2515, which was recently introduced. And it deals with the recycled content. And it would lead the way in establishing a market that we lack for recycled material. Under the Trump administration, we've seen an active attempt to undermine the importance of environmental protections and conservation. And this is even more apparent with what's been happening during the pandemic, with big plastic and oil winning big, bailouts from the federal level, and also deregulation, rolling back or getting rid of environmental protections so that they could just basically profit more off of polluting our communities. But there is action to address this as well. There is a federal bill, Break Free from Plastic Pollution Act of 2020, and that's sponsored by Senator Tom Udall, with co-sponsorship including our own Senator Cory Booker and Democratic Vice Presidential candidate Kamala Harris and Senator Bernie Sanders, amongst others, including over 79 co-sponsors in the House. And the bill seeks to reduce the production and use of certain single-use plastic products and packaging. And it seeks to improve the responsibility of producers to ensure that their products are disposed of properly and won't cause the deleterious effects on our ecological and public health that we see. If you can go to the next slide. So this has to do with reusables in the COVID world. So unfortunately, and you know, we've seen a lot of misinformation, particularly in the beginning of the pandemic, when people were panicked in the state of New Jersey. The plastics industry sent a letter to the Department of Health and Human Services in our state to make a public statement endorsing unsubstantiated assertions that single-use plastics are the safest choice amid a pandemic. While some misguided lawmakers in the New Jersey legislature were calling for a rollback in response to that and easing prohibitions on single-use plastic bags, and they argued that often unwashed reusable bags are hotbeds for the coronavirus. And this was really upsetting. It's really unconscionable to me, and it should be to all of us, that profit-driven single-use plastic bag proponents are spreading false information while people are vulnerable and seeking good advice. We were tuning in every night to news conferences, and they were out there peddling really false conspiracy theories. So I just want to be really clear. Single-use plastic bags can transmit the coronavirus the same as anything as a surface that can be touched. You know, when your grocery store clerk touches a plastic bag and then hands it to you, they're transmitting all kinds of things on there. And they're not free somehow from contamination. The plastic bags, or the reusable bags, we hope they're not plastic. We hope they're fabric that you're bringing in. If they've been cleaned with soap, soap kills coronavirus. They're going to come to the store clean. You're going to put your items into them. You're going to take them home, and you're going to wash them. You can't wash a single-use plastic bag. So the whole idea was to use these scare tactics. These pathogens are going to be on your single-use plastic bags from the grocery store. In fact, according to a study published in the New England Journal of Medicine in March of 2020, on March 17th, it said that COVID stays longer on plastic than cardboard. And that time frame is roughly 3 times longer. So my background is in chemistry. So if it stays 3 times longer on on plastic than cardboard, one would imagine it would stay longer on plastic single-use bags that you would get at the grocery store than paper bags you could get at the grocery store. So what does the plastic industry say? Use plastic. If they really cared about your health, what they were promoting is use paper. Paper has its own environmental impacts, which we could talk about, but they weren't. They were really caring more about their bottom line. They wanted to sell more plastic, and they saw the pandemic as an opportunity to do just that. And that's really a sad thing. So if we go to the next slide. So the summary of that is, it's safe to use your reusable bag in the grocery store. It's safe because you can wash it, and soap kills coronavirus. Single-use plastics are not a solution to viral spread. If they cared about it, they would be using paper bags if they were going to use a single-use bag at all. But we don't need to do that. So zero waste. So think about it. When you bring your own reusable bag to the grocery store, you have complete control over it. You know where it's been, and you can wash it at any time. And fortunately, we're seeing that this plastic industry has this ill-formed campaign that isn't taking root, is sort of taking root. Maplewood publicly reaffirmed their plastic bag ordinance, and Washington State passed a statewide plastic ban ordinance in the midst of the COVID-19 pandemic. And in New Jersey, we're recommending, and the guidance for restaurants reopening during COVID-19 did not even encourage the use of single-use plastics, like plastic plates or forks and knives and spoons. So it's important in times like this that we operate on facts and science, and that we're not using fear and misinformation. But always remember, you have to wear your mask in public to protect others, and operate under safe social distancing guidelines, and wash your hands frequently and use hand sanitizer. That's really the solution to getting that spread under control. So you've been into the store's parking lots lately, or walked through a local park. You may have seen discarded masks and gloves lying around. Not only is this trend an additional source of plastic pollution, it's also a possible vector for COVID-19. And so we just want to make sure we're encouraging folks to discard of these items properly, because it looks like masks are going to be a requirement for our lives in the foreseeable future. So we want to ask everyone to please do their part and protect other people. Throw your face masks out and your gloves accordingly. And so, that's really important. And I think we're at the next slide from here.
Ed, can I just jump in here real fast?
Yeah. Yep.
And share that this particular slide here was developed by, from Union County, a Clean Communities Coordinator, and Joanne Gedmedin. I'm hoping I say your name right, Joanne. She was kind enough to share this. And it's been actually really fantastic how other counties are actively educating folks on proper disposal of PPE. And Union County is doing a tremendous job. They're also running a program called Choose to Reuse program, which is fantastic. I also wanted to just add here that for those clean community coordinators that are on the call today, we are offering 1.5 credits. So I wanted to share that information.
That is great. And, it's really hard because I think a lot of us like to clean up our communities ourselves and pick up trash. And it's kind of off-putting to see masks and gloves. You're not really sure, should you touch them? You're not sure if you have access to the hand sanitizer right away. And so it's really great to see materials like this being developed to help people understand how they have to take personal responsibility. So things you can do to get involved, ways that you can help address the plastic problem during this pandemic. So there's a few things that you can do. I mentioned already contacting your local assembly member to tell them to pass the single-use bag, styrofoam, and straw bill. That's A 1978 in the assembly. That's where it's stalled. But the real important thing is, it's hard to know timing-wise when the bill will get picked back up. I would say, encourage your town to pass a local ordinance. It's really important. The more towns that are covered by these ordinances, the more pressure there is on industry for a single solution across the state, because as businesses operate in multiple municipalities and the rules vary, it gets a little bit cumbersome for them. And, the negotiating power to protect the environment actually can be something that brings folks to the table that normally wouldn't be. And, I think the fact that so many towns have passed resolutions is one of the reasons this bill has gotten so far. And I can't think that if we didn't have more ordinances being passed and more rules going into effect, that we wouldn't be able to get it out of the assembly and finally to the governor for a statewide single-use plastics ban. And it'd be the most comprehensive in its current form in the country, which is also exciting. And I'd also say, don't forget about the balloons. There was a statewide balloon ban bill recently. It was A 4332. And that bill hasn't really gone anywhere either. So locally, a lot of towns have been taking action on the pervasive problem of balloon releases, getting into our environment and making its way and choking animals, etc. And then importantly too, how can you get involved? Well, we work on elections too. So vote with your ballot and your wallet. Choose products and businesses that are environmentally friendly, that are working on reducing plastic pollution. If you have a choice between a cardboard container and a plastic container, the solution, the choice is obvious. And the more we do that, the more the manufacturers are going to be making those. And then also, look at your candidates up and down the ballot. Where are they on the environment? And vote with the environment in mind. Also, you can educate your community. I know a lot of you do this, like the sign that we looked at, about the plastic pollution problem. It is a public health crisis. It's making its way into our food. By 2050, there will be more pieces of plastic in our ocean than sand on the planet Earth, little kernels of sand. Come on, we have to do something about this. So, advocate for extended producer responsibility and bottle bills as well. This puts the onus back on the producer. I think, really, despite all the hardship, this is also going to be a time of great opportunity to not revert to business as usual. But hopefully through COVID and through the awareness that we're seeing, we can transcend and build a stronger and healthier future for all of us. And most importantly, for our children and our children's children, because the decisions we make today affect them. And we can be doing things differently. Humans can solve the problems they caused. And this is the challenge of our time. Getting rid of plastics and plastic pollution, addressing things like climate change, they're going to be legacy issues. And folks are counting on us. And we've seen that, the younger generation asking all of us to step to the plate. And with that, I think we're going to stop and take some of the questions. I see the chat box is moving, but Dini, I don't know if you've been watching and there are any particular ones, because I've been chatting, not reading as carefully.
Hi, Ed. How are you? It's Liz. I can
have
a couple of questions that we wanted to ask. Terza had asked, what is the problem with the state bill and why is it so stalled?
So what's the problem with the state bill? Well, it's a couple things. One, people hate change. And I mean that by like corporations and businesses. This would be a change that was implemented from the state. And whenever something, even though it's the right thing to do, happens, people come out against it. I think 2 or 3 years ago, the biggest opponent of a single-use plastics ban was the Food Council, and the Food Council represents grocers. But as I mentioned, as more and more local municipalities were passing ordinances, they came to the table and they are supporting a full ban on plastic and paper now, because that saves them money. If you bring your own bag, they don't have to buy any bags. So that's helps their bottom line. And I guess somewhere along the line, they probably are thinking about the environment, but they weren't 3 years ago when they opposed it altogether. I would say that the business as usual, profits, costs, those are probably the things that are the biggest stumbling block for the bill. And in the assembly, it's the people's house. It tends to be closer, the elections are more frequent to these changes on the ground. And so a local business owner, who goes in and grabs the ear of a legislator can have a pretty big sway to kind of, change them from moving something forward. One of the easiest things you can ask a legislature to do is to do nothing, right? Don't change anything, because when you change something, you're going to upset someone. So I think that's generally what's holding it back. The responsibility for us is to make it clear that they have to hear from us that we want this change, that there are more people and an overwhelming majority beyond that think this is a good thing, that even though some folks are going to be mad or disappointed, it's a change and maybe they have to do things differently in their business, the support for this and doing the right thing are very, very high. That's what people want to see. And that's incumbent on all of us. I think the businesses have a pretty strong phone line to the legislators, and their voices can be very loud, but the public is a very powerful motivator as well. And so it's really incumbent on all of us to rise above that and make a difference. And there's been a lot of accommodations in the legislation for concerns that were raised by businesses, like meat packing on, that pink styrofoam because it holds better and it meets standards and stuff. And so that was carved out so that, that polystyrene ban is not applicable in that area. So we're talking about Dunkin' Donuts cups. Dunkin' Donuts has moved faster. I don't know if you've been recently, but they're on paper already. Like they're moving on, and it's the right thing to do, and it's better and it tastes better, quite frankly. I'm a big Dunkin' Donuts fan, so I'm really happy about that.
Thanks, Ed. The other thing that somebody said is, what are the top 3 things that you can say to businesses that are scared or reluctant to make this change in terms of education and persuasion? Obviously, you just talked about Dunkin' Donuts, and maybe even sometimes it might be pointing out another business that is already doing something. including, there's another Clean Ocean Action has a ocean friendly certificate that they give to businesses. So if you're in that area, you may be able to talk your business into it that way. But Ed, do you have any other ideas?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly think it's about, really having that personal contact and sharing experiences from other business owners that have made the switch. I remember, and I don't know which shore town it was that went to a ban, and, the TV cameras rolled up at the bakery, and they were going to like ask the bakery, like, how are you surviving without plastic bags? And the owner was like, oh, it's great. We put them in paper bags. And I know that I'm helping protect the shore. And this is a mainstay of our economy, and tourism is critical for our business to survive. So I feel great when I'm using a paper bag. It's not a degradation. It's not turning people away. They're not going to another town, to another bakery, so they can get their bread in plastic. That somehow they get a competitive advantage in that. And consumers are happy as well. So I think it's sharing those personal stories. And in the beginning of this, it was hard for folks to imagine what the alternative was. I got a thing of soup, and what do I put it in? And then you just have to explain, well, how did they used to package stuff at the Chinese foods when you did takeout? It was in aluminum with a little paper lid, and they still have the paper that wraps the rice, and there's a little metal piece on it. And this is something that we just have to remind people about what the solutions are, and then they get a chance. And as more and more states have moved in this direction in local municipalities, they've also driven a market, and it's dropped the cost scales of economy for some of these reusable materials that are not plastic or that are more sustainable and recyclable, like cardboard, et cetera. So, folks are using bamboo, et cetera. So now there's actually a better market with time. And I think it's talking to them in businesses, each business about what is it they do and what are the alternatives. And we've seen some businesses where we were using a ban in place or a limitation, moving this direction on their own. And they see, people really appreciating it and writing them about it and frequenting their establishment more. And I had a friend who's pretty conservative on Facebook post her power's been out for a long time. She went to get throwaway plates. And she said all that was left was styrofoam, and she couldn't bring herself, because this isn't a conservative or liberal issue. This is a human issue. She couldn't bring herself to buy the styrofoam. We shouldn't be selling the styrofoam in the first place. But the good thing is consumers are making that choice on their own. It was on the shelf. People chose the other option. It might even cost a little bit more, but the long-term costs are less because it doesn't stick around for 50 to 100 or 200 years. Thanks,
Ed. In some of the states where the laws are in place, do you have specific examples to share on economies of scale? Like, is it really costing these businesses a ton of money, or anybody?
I don't have specific numbers on that. I don't know, Dini, if you do.
No, I don't.
I mean, I can say, like, I'm on my school board here in Franklin Township, and we've been moving away from, styrofoam trays. I mean, clearly the students haven't been back, and there is an added cost, but I'd say over the last year, the cost it's decreased almost 60%. So now it's 40% of what it was. It was more expensive before, but you're talking about a polystyrene tray that's probably like half a cent. So when you say a cardboard tray or a recyclable tray is 3 cents, that's a big difference. But there has been significant reduction. That's the only number that I'm aware of.
Yeah, off the top of my head, I'm going to encourage folks to check out a program called Rethink Disposable, where they have done these audits with businesses.
Yeah.
And it's a fantastic tool. Clean Water Action does that national program, and here as well in New Jersey. So it's called Rethink Disposable, and they have a lot of tools available to do that plastic audit. Okay.
Somebody was asking, Claire was asking, what type of single-use specifically does the S2515, what type materials does that really address besides straws and bags?
Well, it's going to be styrofoam as well, right? So those clamshell containers, right, where you put the French fries and the coleslaw and then your Reuben in it, right? And mostly it's the shopping bags. And the nice thing about the New Jersey law and the strong definition for what a reusable bag is it wouldn't end up like a problem that occurred in California, where they said a single-use bag is up to a certain thickness. And then what everyone ended up doing is just getting thicker bags. So they went from these like, ones you can sound, they're thin and crinkly, the ones we go to the grocery store and they have, to like a Best Buy or Macy's bag. And they called that recyclable because by the definition, it was thicker and it was recyclable. And then they were using more plastic. So we've learned the lesson from that. And, our reusable bag definition is very strong. It requires stitched handles. It needs to be able to be washable and used multiple times. And that'll move away from that. But those are the things that are included in the New Jersey legislation.
And what about the federal, Ed?
I'm not as familiar with that.
Okay.
But if while Dini's going, I can take a quick peek and pull it up and answer that.
So,
I don't want to make up an answer.
Gotcha.
I want to be specific.
Understood. So is it still better for a town to pass an ordinance and wait for the state to pass that one? And will the towns then need to rewrite their ordinance after the state law is passed?
I would say without a question, the best thing to do is pass your own ordinance, because I would not hold my breath. This has been going on for years. We're just around the corner. There was going to be statewide action. And I think the pressure that we saw from the plastics industry during COVID means they are not going to let up in their opposition to this. And, there will be some distractions at the state level with the pandemic and other issues that are coming up. The budget is due to be redone by the end of September. You've got normal sort of legislative cycles. So I say do your local ordinances, please. I think it's critical. I think it helps drive a statewide movement and a bill to be passed. And then my understanding is the way the legislation is currently written is it would supersede anything happening at the local level. So you don't have to rewrite yours. It will on the items that it addresses. It will sort of replace it. And the other reason why I think it's important for you to do it, I'll just mention it because you guys are like insiders here, is because the way the legislation is written is anything that's in effect now stays on the books until the law goes into effect. And believe it or not, when a law is signed, it doesn't go into effect immediately. They were looking at a 1-year implementation phase. So let's say it's passed by December of this year. It won't go into effect till December of the next year. So you have, from today, 18 months of more plastics being used, 4.4 billion bags a year. Plastic single-use bags are used in New Jersey alone. So everything local communities can do to get their law on the books will help reduce that number and address a really important problem between now and action, and then between action and implementation.
That's a really great point, Ed.
Thank you. That's good. Connor had asked, sorry, I'm trying to get back to it. Just a second. Connor had said that paper bags have devastating impacts to the environment and the pulping process and have extremely limited supply. What's the safer alternative to paper?
Reusable, washable bags, cloth. New Jersey's going to be having a bustling hemp market, a very strong fabric. That would definitely be the way to go. If I had my choice, the bill would just say fabric, or maybe even just hemp. And I'd mention, like, right now, to satiate New Jersey's paper bag usage, we cut down the equivalent of 1,000 football fields worth of trees. So some people say, well, why not just move from plastic to paper? If right now we're cutting down 1,000 football fields to make the paper bags we use every year, how many more will we have to cut down? So trees could be sustainable. For every one you cut down, you plant some more, and that kind of thing. But that's not what's going to happen. And we're going to lead to deforestation. We just can't keep up with that quantity.
These are great questions. Clearly, we have a fantastic engaged audience here.
Excellent. Yeah.
All right. Well, I'm going to go ahead and start my portion of it, and we will stop again at the end and take some more questions. Thank you,
Just so
Ed.
you know, I can't see you. So if you want to be seen, you might want to turn your camera on.
Yes, I do.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm here to talk to you about local ordinances. Ed did a phenomenal job setting the stage on why this is really critical. It really is the main reason for why there's statewide interest. We're up to 125 municipal ordinances and 2 county ban resolutions that were just passed in the last couple of years. And even now, in the height of COVID, there were 5 towns that passed ordinances. That were Kearney, Pennington, Oceanport, Belmar, and Reddington. So congratulations to that. And I'm thrilled to see in the chat box, there are a few other towns like Aberdeen that are pretty close and getting to that tipping point. So do share with us when your municipality passes an ordinance, because we are keeping track of that. But really, you know, along with these ordinances really help to many of the points that Ed talked about, but it helps local environment because it leads to a reduction in litter and localized flooding, and it improves public health, it improves recycling rates because it decreased contamination, and there are actually financial savings for the municipality because there's less maintenance. When we started this process a few years ago, what we saw were towns starting ordinances. Let's say they just focused on plastic bags, or maybe they just focused on styrofoam. So now what we're seeing is more comprehensive ordinances that are aligned with the state bill. And so now you're seeing ordinances that ban bags, styrofoam, and put a limit on straws. So what are the key components for a successful, for a bag ordinance, for a successful, we're just talking about bags here. Here, what we're recommending and our gold standard is to do a ban fee hybrid where there's a ban on plastic and a fee on paper. And this is at the local level. And the reason for the fee on paper is, to Ed's point, you know, we just don't want people switching directly to using paper because there's environmental costs associated with that. And the bag fee works because the merchant keeps it. The definition of a reusable bag is super important, and I'm going to get to these points next. So this is our definition of reusable bag, which is aligned with the current state definition. It's a bag that's made out of polypropylene, non-woven fabric, cloth, and other machine washable fabric, has stitched handles, and is designed and manufactured for multiple reuse. I want to take a minute and talk about this. So now that some of the ordinances that were passed last year or are being carried out, now they're happening. What we're running into is that a few municipalities are dealing with the ramifications of a watered down definition of a reusable bag. Some towns passed ordinances with the stipulation that a reusable bag has a 2.25 mils thickness. And now they're just being challenged because these stores are just giving out slightly thicker disposable bags. So that's a real issue. So now they're looking into amending their ordinance so that it's tighter. So this notion of a stitched handle, it really comes in, is really important. So you could see here, it's these fabric bags with the tight handle stitching. So that just means that the bags are made better. They're a little sturdier. So our recommendation is to charge a fee of at least 10 cents for the single-use paper carryout bag. And we strongly recommend working regionally. And this has been very successful in a variety of counties. Morris County comes to mind. The Chathams, Chatham Township, Chatham Borough, Madison, and a few other Morris County municipalities work together to work, on an ordinance, and then really encourage and supported each other's ordinances. And that really helps ease the transition for retailers. And on our website, anjec.org/alerts, there is a sample model ordinance that you folks can take a look at. So data collection. I think this is super important, and that's in our model ordinance as well, because without it, how do we know that we're being effective? One of my favorite examples of proving ordinance success through data collection comes from Suffolk County, New York. And back from, they instituted their single-use bag law in 2017. So the data from 2017 to 2018, their top 5 takeaways was that plastic and paper bag use at stores was reduced over 80%. Suffolk County is using approximately 1.1 billion with a B less plastic bags per year. And the majority of consumers are bringing their own bags or opting for no bag, which is fantastic. And they're finding 41% less plastic bag litter on their beaches. And consumers are generally still using less single-use bags. So, you know, there's so much awareness that comes from just enacting one single-use bag law. And what I love about the Suffolk County, New York example of data collection is that this all happened with a mere 5 cents charge per bag. That's it, just a nickel. And you have that level of savings. So data collection is important. Oops, sorry. So here's another example of why data collection is important. This was happening in the river cleanups in South Orange and Maplewood. And they have a tally card here. And unfortunately, right now, we have to add PPE to our tally card. So that is important. Surfrider has an updated data collection card. And you can find that under cleanups.surfrider.org. And we're happy to share links, you know, at any point. So we understand because of COVID that there are not large group cleanups. They're not happening, which is really unfortunate because the trash is obviously still happening and the litter is still happening. But I'm happy that there are some municipalities and environmental commissions that are organizing smaller group cleanups. So it's kind of virtual, you know, they set a time frame and volunteers contact them, and then they sign up in advance so they know what part of the brook or the river or the park that they're doing a cleanup on, and then DPW will come by later and pick up the waste. So cleanups are still happening, they're just on a smaller scale. Enforcement, you know, in the best of times, enforcing an ordinance is always challenging, even so more now. So I know that many municipalities currently are not actively enforcing, but it's important when you're writing your ordinance to stop and think about enforcement and consider who, you know, when you're creating a team, a champion, a team to really lead this effort of developing and passing an ordinance in your municipality, who's going to be part of that team effort? And really consider who's doing the enforcement, invite them to be part of those meetings, and work with you on building that ordinance. So enforcement, depending on your municipality, is truly all over the place. Some municipalities use the recycling person, other municipalities use township administrators, other municipalities use borough administrators, Department of Sanitation, Department of Public Works, it's really all over the place. So what's great is, you know, the EC and the Green Team members can be an extra pair of ears and eyes to help with enforcement. But it's really important that that enforcement official is part of the team when you're writing that ordinance. Education. We're doing it now. We would love for you to take this information and take it back into your community, bring it up on the agendas for township meetings and school meetings. This has to be ongoing. You know, right now, as I shared, the Clean Communities folks are doing a great job talking about disposal of PPE, but it's more than that. And we have to reconnect and share with folks how plastics is a public health crisis. It's connected to climate change, and a lot of issues that are real problematic. And I think, yes, thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you to Ed. Thank you to all of you. And we have time to answer more questions.
I have a couple. Thanks, Dini. Thanks, Ed. Do we know about the state, if the state is planning to widen the recycling, if the ban passes? Because there's still other plastic containers that we have such a varied amount of recycling around the state that what about the I think 1s and 2s are often recyclable, but 3s are not, and they're all different. Does the state making any kind of a plan to expand recycling in the state?
I know that they were talking about it. I think it's still too new to say where the recycled content bill is going to land. We're still in the information gathering stage.
Thank you. Somebody asked about groceries getting home delivered, which a lot of people are using in COVID. Would they be, susceptible to any ordinance, or are they an exception for some reason?
I don't know how they're delivered. I think it varies from grocer to grocer. It's a very specific question, which probably requires a township lawyer to think about it. But my guess would be that if you're operating in a town that has an ordinance against banning a certain thing, you can't deliver something with that thing. So for example, if, let's take a fee, for example, the grocery store is delivering in paper bags, things that aren't needing to be kept cold, right? So your chips and your cereals. If there's a fee on those paper bags, I would imagine they would have to pay that fee. But my mind is sort of spinning because if the business is not in your town, then maybe they're not set up to collect that fee, and maybe that's not the case. So it's kind of a little gray, but let's assume the business is in your town and they're delivering within their town. They're not a neighboring business. Then I think they would still pay the fee for the paper bag that they put the cereal and crackers and chips in, and it would be part of on the bill for that. That would probably make the most sense. It's the same as the per item kind of fee, and then they wouldn't be using plastic because it would not be allowed. That's kind of the simple answer. I think it is a complicated question.
It's a very complicated question, especially now. So I do all the grocery shopping in my house, and now that everybody's home, I've been thrilled. I bought these trolley reusable bags, and they fit right inside my grocery cart. And stores like Wegmans and ShopRite, they have a mobile scan. It's been actually fun again to go to the grocery store because I just use my mobile scan. I put them directly, I bag it directly in my cart, and I pay with just my cell phone. I'm out the door. No more of this taking it in, taking it out, taking it in. It's too much. So it's been much easier.
With COVID, that's actually better. You're less contact with anything when you're doing it that way, right?
Yes, definitely. Let me see.
It's complicated, that's for sure.
Yes, it is complicated.
And somebody was asking about, with all the shipping that everybody's doing and delivering, not just of food products, but you're getting a lot of things from Amazon with this bubble wrap in it. Any suggestions on how to deal with those things?
It's a little bit trickier, actually. I did a little bit of typing around, and so I think the problem isn't necessarily the little bubble wrap in there. Amazon has the clear plastic that gets expanded and has like a green label on it, and it's kind of like it's stuck in a sheet and they have it in there. I think that one is recyclable in some places depending on the number, but that outside white thing with the blue that they just shove the item in and seal it, that envelope that it comes in, that is not recyclable. And then sometimes they ship things like clothing and like a white bag that's black on the inside so you can't like see through it or whatever, and sometimes other items are in there, and that's not recyclable in a lot of ways. But it seems like the ones that aren't recyclable are in that plastic film category. like a plastic bag, a single-use plastic bag. And there are some places you can drop those off and they will take them, but they're not part of the normal recycling stream. So Dini, you probably know more about those centers, but you know, when you collect tons of single-use plastic bags, there are places you can bring them.
Yeah, so that I know a lot of towns use the Trex program to collect all the plastic bags and the plastic film. And fortunately, most stores are still taking it. I know that the shop right near me where I go, they're still accepting it. I heard that some stores like Acme that have put a pause on it, which makes no sense to me, but that's what they're doing. So that's, yeah. And then there was somebody that wrote in the chat that the UPS accepts bubble wrap and packaging for reuse in their shipments. So thank you for sharing. I think that's fantastic. Yes. Let me see. What is there any?
Georgia is asking it's our opinion that writing to a company and asking them to change their policy on their products, that they're shipping products or their packaging products is work. And do you know any of the best sites to have a sample letter that might be useful?
A site that has a sample letter. I know in Amazon, you can give them feedback on how the package was shipped to you. Let me think about a site that has a template for it, and I will get back to the person who asked.
Thank you.
And I see there's a question here. Would it be helpful for us to reach out to Assemblyman Coughlin to get the Assembly bill out of committee? Yes, yes, it would.
Yeah, the speaker, yeah.
Yes.
Assemblyman and speaker, especially if he's your representative. It would be very helpful.
Please do. Please give him a call. We're just reading here, see what other questions that we need to answer. So I hear there's some problems for towns to approve stream cleanups. Not sure. If you reach out to us at info@anjec.org, I can talk to you a little bit more about that. All right. The chat box has been very active, which I love. Ed, do you see any other questions that we need to answer?
I think people have been answering them. It's a really good group and helping each other. It's very cooperative, which I'm very impressed with, and thank you all for that. I mean, I would just say, I know that a lot of things were put on ice or on hold, is maybe a better way to say it, because of the pandemic and folks weren't having regular council meetings and some of the other bodies weren't getting together and they just transitioned to virtual. It seems to me like we're going to need to get going forward in this new normal, right? The new normal of wearing masks, social distancing, washing frequently, and taking all of those steps. And other problems and other things that are happening in the world that we kind of put off for a little while, like my mom in an elective surgery, she wasn't allowed to go in. Those things have started back up. And I think something like plastics in your local community and an ordinance is, something that should really rise to, on the agenda now. I think the public, community members are ready to have those conversations again. And I would encourage folks to do that and still be sensitive to what's happening locally. But certainly, we have to, I want to say, sort of get back to business as much as possible. And again, it's going to probably be even harder for the state to take action on plastics than a local community. So the more action we see locally, the more likely we're going to see statewide or a bill and law to get rid of these single-use plastics and move to something that's more sustainable. We're really going to need local action more than ever.
Thank you, Ed. On our website, we have posting FAQs on our reusable safe, so please take a look at that. I also shared more web resources. The Story of Plastic, if folks haven't watched that movie, it's fantastic. And then Beyond Plastics and Upstream, really great resources. And there's a lot of fantastic organizations that are part of our coalition that are working on this issue as well. Clean Ocean Action, Clean Water Action, New Jersey Audubon, and Surf Rider. So a lot of tools right here in our state. So if they're not
I would mention one thing. Someone asked early about the federal legislation, so I did nose around a little bit. And basically, it bans single-use plastics, similar to New Jersey's legislation, and anyone that aren't recyclable. That's sort of the category. So these thin plastic films aren't recyclable readily. You have to go specially to do them, be applicable. And then any that aren't, it associates a fee. So it gets that user fee part, which then puts people in the habit. And the ultimate goal is bring your own clean, reusable bag. And, you know, with COVID particularly, clean it again when you're done. The federal bill also is along that same lines. So it's strong from that perspective.
All right. That's great. Is that a rooster that's in your background?
It's a bantam rooster, and he can't crow like a normal rooster, so he just does that little noise. He's like about this big.
Oh, how cute!
His name is Midnight. Yeah.
Oh, how sweet! How sweet! Wow. Well, he has very good timing. He realized lunch and learn is over.
It's our alarm clock.
All right. We will have this up on our YouTube channel, this presentation. And yeah, thank you again so much for joining us, Ed. I really appreciate it. And all of you folks for being so fantastically active and sharing. We appreciate it.
Thank you. Thanks for having me. Thank you, everybody. Keep up the great work.